The scientific revolution led to an intellectual movement in the 1700s called the Enlightenment. Philosophers and intellectuals in Europe admired Isaac Newton because he had used reason to explain the laws governing nature. In the Enlightenment, people began to look for laws governing human behavior as well. They hoped to apply reason and the scientific method to all aspects of society, government, religion, economics, and education. Like the scientists of the 1600s, the thinkers of the Enlightenment also wanted to challenge accepted traditions and ideas about society by using reason and logic. For this reason, the 1700s is often called the Age of Reason. The Enlightenment started from some key ideas put forth by two English political thinkers of the 1600s, Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. Both men experienced the political turmoil of England early in that century. However, they came to very different conclusions about government and human nature. Thomas Hobbes expressed his views in a work called Leviathan, published in 1651. The horrors of the English Civil War convinced him that all humans were naturally selfish and wicked. Without governments to keep order, Hobbes said, there would be war of every man against every man. In this state of nature, as Hobbes called it, life would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Hobbes argued that to escape such a bleak life, people gave up their rights to a strong ruler. In exchange, they gained law and order. Hobbes called this agreement, by which people created government, the social contract. Because people acted in their own self-interest, Hobbes said, the ruler needed total power to keep citizens under control. The best government was one that had the awesome power of a leviathan, a legendary sea monster. In Hobbes's view, such a government was an absolute monarchy, which could impose order and demand obedience. The philosopher John Locke held a different, more positive view of human nature. He believed that people could learn from experience and improve themselves. As reasonable beings, they had the natural ability to govern their own affairs and to look after the welfare of society. Locke criticized absolute monarchy and favored the idea of self-government. According to Locke, all people are born free and equal, with three natural rights: life, liberty, and property. The purpose of government, said Locke, is to protect these rights. If a government fails to do so, citizens have a right to overthrow it. Locke published his ideas in 1690, 2 years after the Glorious Revolution. His book, Two Treatises on Government, served to justify the overthrow of James II. Locke's theory had a deep influence on modern political thinking. His statement that a government's power comes from the consent of the people is the foundation of modern democracy. The ideas of government by popular consent and the right to rebel against unjust rulers helped inspire struggles for liberty in Europe and the Americas. Although the Enlightenment affected many areas of Europe, most of the great thinkers of the movement were French. As a result, the intellectuals of the Enlightenment are referred to as philosophes, the French word for philosopher. The philosophes were a mix of aristocrats and middle-class journalists, politicians, and businessmen. Regardless of their background, most believed that people could apply reason to all aspects of life, just as Isaac Newton had applied reason to science. 5 important concepts form the core of their philosophy. First, enlightened thinkers believed that truth can be discovered through reason or logical thinking. Reason, they said, was the absence of intolerance, bigotry, or prejudice in one's thinking. Second, the philosophes emphasized the importance of nature. To them, what was natural was also good and reasonable. They believed that there were natural laws of economics and politics, just as there were natural laws of motion. Third, they believed that a person who lived by nature's laws would find happiness. They were impatient with the medieval notion that people should accept misery in this world to find joy in the hereafter. The philosophes wanted well-being on earth, and they believed it was possible. Fourth, the philosophes were the first Europeans to believe in progress for society. Now that people used a scientific approach, they believed, society and humankind could be perfected. Finally, the philosophes believed in liberty. The philosophes envied the liberties that the English people had won in their glorious Revolution and Bill of Rights. In France, there were many restrictions on speech, religion, trade, and personal travel. Through reason, the philosophes believed, society could be set free. Probably the most brilliant and influential of the philosophes was François-Marie Arouet, better known by his pen name Voltaire. A brilliant writer, Voltaire published more than 70 books of political essays, philosophy, history, fiction, and drama. Voltaire often used satire, a sharp form of humor, against his opponents. He made frequent targets of the clergy, the aristocracy, and the government. His sharp tongue made him enemies at the French court, and twice he was sent to prison. After his second jail term, Voltaire was exiled to England for 2 years. There, Voltaire came to admire the English government much more than his own. After he returned to Paris, much of his work mocked the laws and customs of France. He even dared to raise doubts about the Christian religion. The French king and France's Catholic bishops were outraged. In 1734, fearing another unpleasant jail term, Voltaire fled Paris. Although he made powerful enemies, Voltaire never stopped fighting for tolerance, reason, freedom of religious belief, and freedom of speech. At one point he famously declared, "I may disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." Voltaire used his quill pen as if it were a deadly weapon in a thinker's war against humanity's worst enemies: intolerance, prejudice, and superstition. Such attitudes were, he said, infamous or evil things. He often ended his letters with the phrase, "Crush the evil thing." Another influential French writer, the Baron de Montesquieu, devoted himself to the study of political liberty. An aristocrat and lawyer, Montesquieu studied the history of ancient Rome. He concluded that Rome's collapse was directly related to its loss of political liberties. Like Voltaire, Montesquieu believed that Britain was the best governed country of his own day. Here was a government, he thought, in which power was balanced among 3 groups of officials. The British king and his ministers held executive power. They carried out the laws of the state. The members of Parliament held legislative or law-making power. The judges of the English courts held judicial power. They interpreted the laws to see how each applied to a specific case. Montesquieu called this division of power among different branches separation of powers. Montesquieu oversimplified the British system, but his ideas became a key component of constitutional government. Montesquieu explained his political theories in his most famous book, On the Spirit of the Laws, published in 1748. In this book, Montesquieu proposed that separation of powers would keep any individual or group from gaining total control of the government. Power, he wrote, should be a check to power. Each branch of government would serve as a check on the other 2. This idea later would be called checks and balances. Montesquieu's book was admired by political leaders in the British colonies of North America. His ideas about separation of powers and checks and balances became the basis for the United States Constitution. A third great philosophe, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, was passionately committed to individual freedom. The son of a poor Swiss watchmaker, Rousseau worked as an engraver, music teacher, tutor, and secretary. Eventually, Rousseau made his way to Paris and won recognition as a writer of essays. There he met and befriended other philosophes, although he felt out of place in the circles of Paris high society in which they traveled. A strange, brilliant, and controversial figure, Rousseau strongly disagreed with other Enlightenment thinkers on many matters. Most philosophes believed that reason, science, and art would improve life for all people. Rousseau, however, argued that civilization corrupted people's natural goodness. "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains," he wrote. In the earliest times, according to Rousseau, people had lived as free and equal individuals in a primitive state of nature. As people became civilized, however, the strongest among them forced everyone else to obey unjust laws. Thus, freedom and equality were destroyed. Rousseau believed that the only good government was one that was freely formed by the people, a democracy. This democracy would be guided by what Rousseau called the general will, or the best interests of the majority of the citizens. Under such a government, people agree to give up some of their freedom in favor of the common good. In 1762, he explained his political philosophy in a book called The Social Contract. The heart of the idea of the social contract may be stated simply: each of us places his person and authority under the supreme direction of the general will, and the group receives each individual as an indivisible part of the whole. In order that the social contract may not be a mere empty formula, everyone must understand that any individual who refuses to obey the general will must be forced by his fellows to do so. This is a way of saying that it may be necessary to force a man to be free. Freedom, in this case, being obedience to the will of all. Rousseau's view of the social contract differed greatly from that of Hobbes. For Hobbes, the social contract was an agreement between a society and its government. For Rousseau, it was an agreement among free individuals to create a society and a government. Like Locke, Rousseau argued that legitimate government came from the consent of the governed. However, Rousseau believed in a much broader democracy than Locke had stood for. He argued that all people were equal and that titles of nobility should be abolished. Rousseau's ideas inspired many of the leaders of the French Revolution, who overthrew the monarchy in 1789. An Italian philosophe named Cesare Beccaria turned his thoughts to the justice system. He believed that laws existed to preserve social order, not to avenge crimes. In his celebrated book on Crimes and Punishments, published in 1764, Beccaria railed against common abuses of justice. They included torturing of witnesses and suspects, irregular proceedings in trials, and punishments that were arbitrary or cruel. He argued that a person accused of a crime should receive a speedy trial, and that torture should never be used. Moreover, he said, the degree of punishment should be based on the seriousness of the crime. He also believed that capital punishment should be abolished. Beccaria based his ideas about justice on the principle that governments should seek the greatest good for the greatest number of people. His ideas influenced criminal law reformers in Europe and North America. The philosophers challenged many assumptions about government and society, but they often took a traditional view toward women. Rousseau, for example, developed many progressive ideas about education. However, he believed that a girl's education should mainly teach her how to be a helpful wife and mother. Other male social critics scolded women for reading novels because they thought it encouraged idleness and wickedness. Still, some male writers argued for more education for women and for women's equality in marriage. Women writers also tried to improve the status of women. In 1694, the English writer Mary Astell published a serious proposal to the ladies. Her book addressed the lack of educational opportunities for women. In later writings, she used Enlightenment arguments about government to criticize the unequal relationship between men and women in marriage. She wrote, "If absolute sovereignty be not necessary in a state, how comes it to be so in a family? If all men are born free, how is it that all women are born slaves?" During the 1700s, other women picked up these themes. Among the most persuasive was Mary Wollstonecraft, who published an essay called A Vindication of the Rights of Woman in 1792. In the essay, she disagreed with Rousseau that women's education should be secondary to men's. Rather, she argued that women, like men, need education to become virtuous and useful. Even if they are to be mothers, education will make them better mothers. Wollstonecraft also believed that women should have more access to professions, especially those traditionally dominated by men. For example, she argued, women should not only be able to be nurses, but should also be able to become doctors. She also argued for women's right to participate in politics. Women made important contributions to the Enlightenment in other ways. In Paris and other European cities, wealthy women helped spread Enlightenment ideas through social gatherings called salons. At these gatherings, women directed discussions of new ideas in science and the arts. One woman fortunate enough to receive education in the sciences was Émilie du Châtelet. She was an aristocrat trained as a mathematician and physicist. By translating Newton's work from Latin into French, she helped stimulate interest in science in France. Over a span of a few decades, Enlightenment writers challenged long-held ideas about society. They examined such principles as the divine right of monarchs, the union of church and state, and unequal social classes. They held these beliefs up to the light of reason and found them unreasonable. The philosophers mainly lived in the world of ideas. They formed and popularized new theories. Although they encouraged European monarchs to make reforms, they were not active revolutionaries. However, their theories eventually inspired the American and French revolutions and other revolutionary movements in the 1800s. Enlightenment thinking produced three other long-term effects that helped shape Western civilization. The first effect was a belief in progress. Pioneers such as Galileo and Newton had discovered the key for unlocking the mysteries of nature in the 1500s and 1600s. With the door thus opened, the growth of scientific knowledge seemed to quicken in the 1700s. Scientists made key new discoveries in chemistry, physics, biology, and mechanics. The successes of the scientific revolution gave people confidence that human reason could solve social problems. Philosophers and reformers urged an end to the practice of slavery. They also argued for more social equality and improvements in education. Through reason, a better society was possible. A second outcome was the rise of a more secular or worldly outlook. During the Enlightenment, people began to openly question their religious beliefs and the teachings of the Church. Before the scientific revolution, people accepted the mysteries of the universe as the mysteries of God. One by one, scientists discovered that these mysteries could be explained mathematically. Newton himself was a deeply religious man, and he sought to reveal God's majesty through his work. However, his findings caused some people to change the way they thought about God. Voltaire and other critics attacked some of the beliefs and practices of organized Christianity. They wanted to rid religious faith of superstition and fear and promote tolerance of all religions. Faith in science and in progress produced a third outcome, the rise of individualism. As people began to turn away from the church and royalty for answers, they looked to their own reason instead. The philosophers encouraged people to use their own ability to reason in order to judge what is right or wrong. They also emphasized the importance of the individual in society. Government, they argued, was formed by individuals to promote their welfare.